Thank you. In introducing Salman Rushdie, I could spend a great deal of time merely listing the many honors and prizes he has earned throughout his career, a career that features a series of bold and grandly imagined novels that together represent one of the most impressive artistic achievements of the past 30 years. Or I could point to more immediate evidence of his remarkable appeal. For the first time in her life, my mother said no when I asked her to babysit tonight. She, like the rest of you, wanted to be here and have a chance to listen firsthand to one of the world's great writers, someone whose expansive vision of human experience, a vision at once learned, playful, tragic, and incomparably vital, has in turn expanded our own again and again. With the publication of his latest book, The Lush and Energetic Luca and the Fire of Life, Rushdie has reminded his many admiring readers of a lesson we learned 20 years ago from the wonderful Haroun and the Sea of Stories. The world's most famous storyteller hasn't been inspired to his endless verbal acrobatics and narrative skills from just his masterful engagements with the Arabian Nights, or the Conference of Birds, or the Wizard of Oz, but also from his work as a storyteller to his sons Zafar and Milan. In this latest instance, Rushdie has written a book about Luca, a boy on a quest to save his storytelling father Rashid, the Shah of Blah, from a mortal curse. This is a quest that takes him and a wild band of companions into a magic world where, against long odds and a fantastic bestiary of opponents, come rogues gallery of old gods and monsters, Luca must steal the very fire of life and bring it back in time to save not just his father, but the magic world itself from demise. I like to read to my kids from Faulkner novels to get them to fall asleep at night. I left one on tape when my mom wouldn't babysit, and so they're just listening to The Sound and the Fury right now. I put some newspaper down as well. I'm sure they'll be fine. But by comparison, I can't help but imagine, based on the evidence at hand, that if Salman Rushdie is telling you bedtime stories, you're liable to become a happy insomniac. Ladies and gentlemen, Salman Rushdie.
I love the idea of reading kids The Sound and the Fury at bedtime. That would give you nightmares, wouldn't it? Well, it's great for all of you to come. I hope can you hear all right at the back? Up there, could you hear? Otherwise I'll have to go, all right. When I was very young, when I was just starting out as a writer, in fact, even before Midnight's Children was published, I went to a Christmas party at my publisher, Jonathan Cape, very eminent Christmas party because of the grandeur of the Cape's list, which you would see in every writer you'd ever heard of in your life. Doris Lessing over here, John Fowles over there, scary. And the publisher of Cape at that time, Tom Maschler, his father, Kurt Maschler, had also been a publisher in Germany, where he had published many of the great kind of egghead, highbrow writers of Germany, but his great passion had been the publishing of children's books. And he came up to me at this party, kind of like the Ancient Mariner, sort of grabbed me by the wrist. He said there was a ship. But what he said in his very heavily Germanic accent was, "You must a children's book write." See, and at that time my older son Milan was barely a year and a half old. And I said, well, maybe when the kid grows up, I'll think of something. And he said, no, I will to you a story tell. And he told me the story about one of his stable of great writers, the German writer Erich Kästner, who had published works on philosophy and politics and this and that, and he would bully him constantly to write a children's book. And eventually Kästner, in a kind of fed up at being harangued in this way, went off for a few weeks and wrote something and came back and threw it on Kurt Maschler's desk and said, there it is, and now you can shut up. And this was a book called Emil and the Detectives. And it became one of the great classics of children's literature. And as Kurt Maschler said to me with great glee, it's the only one of his books that's still in print. He said, so you must a children's book, right? So I remembered that. And then many years later, I wrote Haroun and the Sea of Stories. And then when my two children are far apart in age, they're 18 years apart, I took a kind of rest in the middle. And I recommend it. And when my younger son, aged about 8 or 9, read Haroun and the Sea of Stories, he immediately began a campaign for a book of his own, to which there are basically 2 answers. The first answer is, kid, life ain't fair, and deal with it. I decided to choose answer B, which was to write the book. So yes, as has been explained to you, it's about many years later in the life of the storyteller Rashid, now much older and with the fire of life burning lower, so to speak, and he at this point early in the book falls into this kind of coma-like sleep, and it's clear that his life is slipping away. And Luca knows that, he knows because his father's always told him, that there is this world of magic existing slightly just off-center from ours. It's been parallel to ours, and if he can get into it and find this fabled treasure, the fire of life, it can save his father's life. The trouble is he's got to do a number of things that are not possible. First of all, he's got to enter the magic world, which you can't do. And if he enters it, you've got to steal the fire of life, which nobody ever has. And if he steals it, then you've got to get back, which is impossible. So of course, that's what he sets out to do. And he has a couple of companions on the voyage. They're actually animals, but they're more like companions than pets. He has a dog called Bear, and he has a bear called Dog. And they're with him at this moment. Now, the bit I'm going to read you is just when he's actually somehow succeeded in stumbling into this parallel reality where he meets a very alarming figure. He meets a figure who looks exactly like his father, but is not his father. This Rashid Khalifa looked exactly like the famous Shah of Blah. He was wearing his Panama hat and his vermilion bush shirt, and when he walked and talked, it became obvious that his voice was Rashid's voice, and the way he moved was an exact copy of the original too. But this Rashid Khalifa could be seen through, not clearly, but murkily, as if he were half real and half a trick of the light. As the first whispers of dawn murmured in the sky above, the figure's transparency became even more obvious. Luca's head began to spin. Had something happened to his father? Was this see-through father some sort of, are you some sort of ghost? He asked in a weak voice. You are certainly something peculiar and surprising, to say the very least. Am I wearing a white sheet? Am I clanking chains? Do I look ghoulish to you? The phantom demanded dismissively. Am I scary? Okay, don't answer that. The truth is that there are no such things as ghosts or specters, and therefore I am not one. And may I point out that right now I am just as surprised as you. Bear's hair was standing on end, that's the dog, and Dog, that's the bear, was shaking his head in a puzzled way, as if he had just begun to remember something. Why are you so surprised? Luca asked, trying to sound confident. You're not the one who can see through me, after all. The see-through Rashid Khalifa came closer, and Luca had to force himself not to run away. I'm not here for you, he said. So it's unusual for you to have crossed over when you're in perfect health. And your dog and bear too, by the way. The whole thing is exceedingly irregular. The frontier is not supposed to be this easily ignored. What do you mean? Luca demanded. What frontier? Who are you here for? The moment he asked the last question, he knew the answer, and it drove the other questions out of his mind. Oh, he said. Oh. Then is my father not yet? Said the see-through Rashid. But I'm the patient type.